just waiting for Felicity and for Matty.
We're good to go. Waiting for live stream. No, okay. Kia ora. Ai, o karakia. Waire te ngākau hikaka, waire te karawaniwani, waire te hakaro ki no te aka ngākau paua, te rongo mau, haka tongia, te aroha, haka tinahia, kia maia, kia tūkaha. E kake kia ike amio a te whenua rūrukutia te mana, haka uhia te tikanga o te kōtahitanga haumi e hui e taiki e. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Thank you, Moho. Carolyn, can we pass the meeting to you, please, just to give us a backgrounder?
Thank you, Your Worship, and good morning and welcome, everybody. I just wanted to give a bit of an overview as to what process has led us to here today and what the next steps are. So we adopted the initial proposal on the 12th of August after many workshops and meetings with councillors, our communities and our community boards. The submission period opened on the 20th of August and closed on the 1st of October, leading us to where we are today, with the submissions pack received by members last Friday. We are here today in hearings to listen to those submitters who wished to be heard and speak to their submission. We culminate with deliberations next Thursday afternoon at a formal council meeting, and from there we will put together what will be our final proposal to take to council on the 4th of November. From there, we go into an appeal period for 1 month until the 13th of December. And after that, it all gets referred to the Local Government Commission for them to make their determination by April next year. So I firstly want to thank our elected members for all the mahi that they have done to get us to where we are today. It's been a very long process, and I'd also like to thank our submitters who are with us right now or listening to the live stream for participating in this process and letting us know how you felt about the proposal that we put out there. There's been some very valuable feedback which we are taking into account as part of deliberations. So thank you.
Your Worship, you're on mute.
Thank you, Caroline, for that. Thanks, Kelly, for reminding me that I'm on mute. Can I remind everyone to go on mute unless you're talking? So welcome to everybody who's on. Hello, Dale, how are you? And the objective of the day, of course, is to listen to our submitters. And I just remind everyone, well, you're welcome to comment on any aspect of the review, the decision around the Maori wards has been made and will be reconsidered by the incoming council in 2023. So anyway, thank you all for that.
I'm happy to move the recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you very much. That's very good of you. Thank you. And I'll second that recommendation. Is there any, it's open for discussion. Does anybody wish to, it's just receiving the submission, etc., etc. Is there any discussion? If not, I'll put the vote. Thanks for reminding me of it, Kelly. I'm in favour. Anne?
In favour.
David?
Aye.
Dave?
Yeah, in favour.
Felicity's not with us yet, I don't think.
In favour.
Oh, you are there. Welcome. Hello, Felicity. Matty, are you with us?
Hello.
Matty is not here, Your Worship. Sorry.
Okay. So Rachel?
Support.
Kelly?
Aye.
Moko?
Aye.
And John Busich.
Aye.
Right, that motion is passed. So thank you for that. So now, Fiona, welcome to the meeting and thank you for your interest. We do appreciate that. And as you know, we have a 10-minute presentation time. And so the floor is yours, ma'am. Welcome, and we pass the meeting to you. You'll get a 9-minute bell or reminder you've got a minute to go.
So just if I can, I'll be raising my hand when we get to 9 minutes, which I'll just do now to demonstrate. So it'll just pop up and then you'll know that you've got a minute to wrap up.
Right, thank you.
It's got unmuting on the screen. What's happening now? Can anyone hear me?
Fiona.
Yeah, we can hear you, Fiona. It's all yours. Can we take the memo down so we can see Fiona, please? Thank you.
Just for the submission, representation review is something I have been speaking to Carolyn with a bit about because it interests me a lot. Basically, the first thing, when councillors voted to increase the councillors to 10 people instead of 9, that increased the Maori seatability from 3 to 4. If there was only 9 councillors, then it would have been more equal to have a Maori seat in each of the wards so that we got a fair representation across the district for a Maori seat. That's my perspective there. But the most important thing that I've been talking about is the Far North or Te Hiku ward, whereby I live 3 k's out of Kaitaia and I'm being put into the Far North subdivision, which I have no relationship at all with. And I moved to Awanui in a month, whereby I'll be put into Whakawhiwhi riding, which there is no relationship to Whakawhiwhi here. Whakawhiwhi is basically a peninsula and should be considered that, and the Far North is the same. With Awanui being put into the Whakawhiwhi ward, I think that's very wrong. The Whakawhiwhi people are a peninsula, totally separate to the community of Awanui or Kaitaia. So I've been through the figures and that with Carolyn, and basically none of the figures ever work when it comes to doing the population variation. But at the moment, we have the North Cape at -12, and we have Doubtless Bay at +8.5, Kaitaia at +1.8, and Whakawhiwhi at -1.97. I would have liked to have done more work by getting the population in all of the ridings in the grid pattern that we had, but I didn't have that time or ability to do it with the COVID thing in. But my question is, or basically, Awanui should stay in the Far North or the Kaitaia riding, or consideration could be looked at the Kaitaia riding being split and having a seat, because the Kaitaia riding actually covers Kaitaia out to Aipara, but the Far North riding, if you look at your maps, actually goes down to Wainui Junction, which is the junction to go to Herikino, and it sweeps around Awanui, and then you've got the Whakawhiwhi coming into Awanui and then taking a chunk out of the what I'd call Sandhills Road, etc., which seems not correct. So I would like council to reconsider those grids, and the North Cape at -12 could be the Whatafifi subdivision at -12, and the North Cape being plus. We're having a lesser minus number in your variations. Carolyn may be able to help us in those processes. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Appreciate those comments, and must confess it's not an area that I'm familiar with. So, in the sense of the lines that you're talking about, so I'll need to do some homework with Caroline on that. Are there questions, please, from elected members of Fiona?
John, I have a question for the staff, just to clarify where we're
Sure.
in the process.
Yeah.
If that's okay. So we have voted on multi-wards, that's clear, but we haven't voted on the number of elected members yet. All we've done is vote what our preferred option was to go out for consultation. So at our next council meeting, at the next meeting about this representation review that we're having consultation about today, that's when we make the decision about the number of councillors and the number of, therefore the number of Māori councillors and general councillors based on the electoral information. Is that correct?
If I may, through your worship, yes, that's correct, Councillor Foy.
Can I also make a comment, John?
Yes, please, absolutely.
The actual figures that this is done on, when I tried to go through the Ask Us thing, was the electoral roll, but talking to Carolyn, it's actually based on the Department of Statistics figures, which are totally different to the general roll and Maori roll figures, and I also got them, I'm a bit concerned because when you use the statistics, it is I'm confused how you can use statistics, not the actual general or Maori roll, but Carolyn tells me that's part of the legislation, now I've lost my train of thought. And then because I are on the general roll, but as a population I'll be in part of the Maori organisation. It's a double vote, so I can vote for the general roll, but I'm also included in the population numbers for the Maori side of it, and I'm not sure how that actually works or if it's a problem with the process.
Right, we'll take advice on that, Fiona, because it's something we do need to understand.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, if there's no other questions, Fiona, thank you very much for your submission, and appreciate it. I've got to say, it's thought-provoking. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for
taking
as long
the time
as the councillors understand the process, because unfortunately our community board people didn't even understand their boundaries.
Well, fair enough.
Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Bye.
Bye.
Your
Now,
worship.
Yes.
Our second submitter scheduled to speak is Martin Ashby, but I haven't seen him arrive yet.
Right.
Gavin Beattie is listed as the next one after him, who is present if you wanted to take him next.
If Gavin's available and wishes to make, we would like Gavin. Are you able to make comment? Hello, Gavin. Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Kia ora tātou.
Thank you.
Thank you for
the floor is yours, sir. Thank
you for the opportunity to speak this morning. I haven't actually got anything further to add to my submission. I do note that the just released Future for Local Government interim report adds, I think, some weight to some of the points I've made. So I'll just highlight the main points in my submission, and then I can answer any questions or provide clarifications. Certainly conscious of the number of figures and statistics I've put in my submission, so there may be some questions. So as I've set out, I'm making my submission as a person interested in good representation review processes arising from my time with the Local Government Commission and with the Department of Internal Affairs leading the policy development for the Local Electoral Act. So while not formally part of the representation review process, 2 preliminary decisions by councils on Māori wards in the choice of electoral system, i.e. FPP or STV, are still key considerations when carrying out reviews of these representation arrangements. And my decision is about the relationship between the decision by the council in 2020 to adopt the STV electoral system and its proposals for the election of councillors and community board members in 2022. I'm also asking the council to reflect on the reasons for its decision to adopt STV and what it is attempting to achieve. So as I've noted, STV is firstly a preferential voting system with voters ranking as many or as few preferences as they wish. While there's a statement on the council website referring to STV as a proportional electoral system, this will only occur in certain circumstances. In short, it will not happen to any great extent in 1, 2 or 3 member wards. So, is the council seeking to provide the most effective representation for all communities of interest in Far North District, whether on the council or on the community boards, or simply aiming to provide representation for certain geographically grouped communities? The Future for Local Government Interim Report comments that generally elected councils are not fully representative of their communities, and local decision making is not as democratic as it could be, that some sectors of the community cannot make their voices heard, and that decisions may not be as representative or effective as they could be. The priority questions the panel says it intends pursuing include how the system can ensure that all communities and interests, including Māori, Pacific and Asian, younger people and renters, are more fairly and equitably represented in local authority decision making. It seems to me there's a real opportunity with this representation review for Far North District Council to address such concerns and to show the way by striving for a more representative council and community boards by maximising the full potential of STV. This requires first an understanding of the quota of votes needed to be elected in an STV election. In, say, a single 6-member Far North General Ward, the quota is around just 2,000 votes with a 50% voter turnout, or it increases to 2,500 with a 60% turnout. In my submission, I've noted this could easily be achieved with targeted campaigns for the election of representatives of young people, Māori electors eligible to vote in a general ward, i.e. not on the Māori roll, and rural electors. As I say in my submission, with one general ward, you can have the best of both worlds. This involves both representation for communities of interest like these, spread across the whole district, as well as representation of interests of local geographically based communities, given the number of general electors in each of the 3 current ward areas. And the same argument applies in relation to the community board areas if elected at large rather than by subdivisions. So in conclusion, I suggest the council seriously considers the option of one general ward for Far North District alongside its proposed Māori ward, and that the 3 community boards also be elected at large. This will enhance the representation for all significant communities of interest in the district. And at the same time, the council can be seen to be taking a lead in addressing some of the real issues for local government in New Zealand identified by the Future for Local Government panel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time you've taken and your thoughtful comments. Are other questions, please, from elected members or staff? Kelly?
Thank you. Hi there, Gavin. Thank you. Your submission was so comprehensive and thought-provoking, and I just am going to make you repeat something, probably. Over, what has it been, 30 years? You know, our council is made up of amalgamated councils previously. So whilst your submission refers to communities of interest, we have still, you know, wards that are, we've got the hangover of previous council, you know, borough councils. How do you think we can address the ward-based issues that we have? With your experience in local government, you probably have seen it time and time again, how if we have all at large people, you know, nominated and elected, there is the risk that a highly populated geographic area, namely Kirikiri or Kaitaia, could end up filling all the seats. And then also with our, we've got at least 10 iwi and 256 hapu in Northland, and just in the far north. How do you think that it would go if we did Māori all at large? How do we make sure that, are you confident that STV would ensure that there would be a diverse geographical representation across the district? Sorry, that was a really long-winded coffee. I need more coffee.
That's fine. No, I understand the points you're making, and the short answer, I think, is yes. I mean, the key point is actually understanding that quota to be elected. And as I've said, with say a 50% turnout, the quota to be elected is around 2,000 votes, and so it's not an issue of where your geographic. I mean, you can have the best of both worlds, as I say. You can just focus your campaign as a candidate geographically on a community with 2,000 votes, and you don't have to be concerned about hard boundaries, whether they're the old boroughs and counties of the prior to 1989. But I think you are maintaining some geographical focus with the proposed the retention, and I support them, the retention of the community boards. But as I say, I think it's the best of both worlds. You can have geographically based representation, but you just need 2,000 votes thereabouts. I'm not saying that's exactly the amount. That's a guesstimate at this stage, and they can be focused in one area, or they could be spread. You know, the young people or farmers, whoever, across the whole district. But you certainly don't have to campaign then across the whole district. You can focus. If it's farmers, for example, you know, where, you know, the fed farmers groupings or local clusters of farmers or young people, whoever they may be. So this understanding of the quota is really crucial, that you don't get, I mean, and it takes some education too. And I think that's one of the key things I bang on a little bit about with STV, and it was unfortunate there wasn't probably the education when it was first introduced for people to understand. But it does depend a little bit on the voters too, of identifying enough preferences, you know, but their first preference will always stand. And if that person hasn't got enough support, the vote simply transfers to your second preference.
Yeah.
And so it's really just focusing on that, where you can get the support for your 2,000 odd voters.
Okay, thank you for that, Gavin. Awesome.
Thank you for that, Gavin. I see Moko and Felicity and Dave Collard did have his hand up for a minute. Aisha, have you got some comment you wish to make just before we come to council?
That was time, Your Worship.
Right, okay. very briefly then. We're meant to only stay with 10 minutes, Gavin, but we're
Sure.
just a little bit. I'll just ask Moko to make a quick question, and Felicity.
Kia ora, Gavin. I note in your submission that you live outside of the far north. I wondered if you had also submitted on the Whangarei District Council's proposal, and you would have seen that they've gone they've chosen to go for a single general ward, but they have FPP. They didn't vote across STV voting. I wondered if you submitted or have any comments on that.
No, I haven't. I've made submissions to 4 councils, including here in Wellington, where I live. But the councils have all got STV, and that's the thing I'm particularly interested in, is just councils understanding the potential of STV is the short answer.
Thank you. Cheers.
Felicity, did you have a quick question, or your hand's not now up?
Thanks for that. Really informative submission. Thank you. My question related to one of the comments you made about campaigning, and I think maybe a metropolitan council be very different to a rural-based council, because a lot of people don't actually campaign. For example, Mary Radish just doesn't really, people just know his name, and that's in the local community where he's from, in his ward. Whereas in Kirikiri, you wouldn't get that basis. Have you seen a difference between metropolitan councils, and I'm not sure the 4 that you approached, and rural councils, just because of people knowing their name locally within the area, as opposed to how that person campaigns at the time of election?
Again, the short answer is no. And I think it's even the councils that are at large, and there are 2 at the moment with STV at large, Palmerston North and Dunedin City, and Dunedin City's only gone at large for the last couple of elections. So there isn't a lot of research around, so it's a little more anecdotal, I guess. But I still come back to the point of just understanding what the quota will be, and that, that it's up to the candidate, obviously, to what extent they campaign, but 2,000 votes in the case of Far North, maybe you don't need to campaign too much if the name's well known enough. But it's just understanding, what the quota is, and that the key point is you're seeking the voters' first preference. So you can then campaign along those lines to the extent you think's appropriate.
Okay, Gavin, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. Thank you for your submission. And as you can see, it's been well received.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Martinga Ashby, is Martinga on?
Yeah, kia ora, John. Kia ora, whānau.
Kia ora, mate. How are you? The floor is yours. You've got 10 minutes. Aisha will give you a 9-minute.
Yeah, all good.
So just for councillors, Martinga is our submission number 62 from page 16.
Thank you, Aisha.
Hey, Aish. Thank you. Awesome. So my name is Martinga Ashby. I'm from Kaikohe in Oromahue. There's another Martinga Ashby, but he's in Ngāwha. I'm 20. Anyways, I want to join the Māori wards because I want to make a difference for our hapu. I'll try to keep this short, the speech. Yeah, I'm real keen to uphold the reputation of the Far North District Council. I'm in the Far North Youth Council with Mātangi. Used to be with Robert Whitaker. Woolborough, sorry. I'm one of the directors of the Kaikohe Markets. I'm the CEO of my social enterprise, Pre-Home Kaikohe, and I'm one of the executive members of the Ngāpuhi online app that we will be developing, bringing Ngāpuhi together. So about me, I'm real passionate about housing and property development. So that's why I started my my company, that umbrellas prefabricated companies and other local businesses to help simplify the process for our whānau. Why I love these prefabs is because they're a lot safer, there's less weather delays, and they're a lot quicker. than traditional building methods. I'm working with John Butler and Kiri Kiri to help me streamline the process of building consent exemptions. You would know what that is. And then I also use the three waters map to help with the infrastructure so we don't dig into any waterways, and then contact Top Energy so we don't dig into any pipes or electricals. And then we're project managing for Papakainga out in Utsukura with a lot of key partners. And yeah, that process is a new process. Instead of the architects telling them you need this, this, and that, the whānau tells us we need this, this, and that. And then sometimes you'll see whānau, they're angry about their land, so you separate them, get one whānau on the table each, and then you build 3D models with them. And then one whānau gets the chance to speak, and then the other whānau gets the chance to speak, and then we just smash the ideas together with our local partners and come back with a master plan. And yeah, so this is our first year into it. I stay at the back of Moerewa at the moment. I've cleaned a couple rivers, and yeah, just keen to make changes, especially around the housing. What's it called? Yeah. I don't know. Yeah. Anyways, thank you for your time. That's me. I should have put.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate you making the effort. It's important that we have people like yourself who make comments to us. So thank you, and we encourage you to continue to do so. Are there questions any councillors wish to raise, or staff wish to raise? Kelly, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thanks for your submission, Martinga, and showing your support for Māori wards and giving us a account of the mahi that you're doing in your rohe and wider, giving us some insight into the tikanga around decision making as well. A taste for some of my colleagues here around the table for when we have our more Māori councillors around the table. So kia ora, have a great day.
Kia ora, Kelly. You too. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. Is there anyone else wishes to comment?
Kia ora, me kara, I had my hand up.
I'm sorry,
you're okay for
I
me
just
to
can't
ask
see
a
the hand
question.
up for some reason. Thank you. And then Dave
Wait.
Collard.
Kia ora, Martinga. Thank you for your submission, mate. Hey, I've just got a quick part on your on the feedback form. You did not support the suggested name for our Māori ward, which is Ngā Tai o Tokerau, and have suggested the Tai Tokerau Māori ward as a name for that. When we were originally putting names together for this ward, we knew that both Whangare, Kaipara and Northland Regional Councils had all put through Māori wards, and we didn't want to get any mix-up across the names that we have, and then people aren't actually sure who they were voting for, and we ended up settling on Ngā Tai o Tokerau. Do you have anything else you could maybe add as to why you potentially didn't support that name, or would prefer just the Tai Tokerau Māori ward as the name for that?
Thanks for bringing that up, bro. Yeah, I just like simple, like I'll make it as simple as can be for the acronym as well. But yeah, no, that was all my thinking.
Kapua. No, ngā mihi. I think we originally wanted Te Raki for the ward, just the north, but I think that's what the regional council have settled for their Māori constituency. But thank you for that. That's insightful.
Cheers, bro.
Dave Collard, are you wanting to make comment? You're on mute, Dave. Dave, you're on mute.
Yeah, thank you. Kia ora, Martinga, Dave Collard here. I didn't notice in your submission whether there was a preference for a single Māori ward or multiple Māori wards for a better stretch of representation. Do you have an opinion on that?
Kia ora, Dave. Nice to meet you. Single Māori ward or spread Māori wards? For like, if I don't personally, I don't know the infrastructure of the council or the Māori wards at the time. I would start off with the single Māori ward first, and then spread out.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Felicity, did I see your hand up?
Oh, thank you, Worship. Dave asked my question.
Okay.
Tēnā koe, Martinga. But when Martinga spoke, it just sort of gave me some further insight into another question for him, if that's okay. With having it at large, why do you think that that's the best preference, to be at large for the first go at Māori wards for the whole Far North District, given its large size geographically?
I feel like because we won't get selected until next year at the end of
You've just gone to mute, Martinga.
Bumped his mute button.
Wow.
You can hear us.
Hey, there you
go. Sorry. I don't know where I got up to.
Start again.
Okay. So I would like to make sure that our foundations are right before we fell over. Yeah, I need to do more research around the, how much Māori wards we have in that. But if we were to spread wide, there's nothing bad about that either. It would help get that cover the wider spread. It's just how would we action what we're trying to say. Sometimes I don't know. I feel like I'm going in circles.
I think it's fair to say it's a learning curve for us all, and we'll address that again in 2023. Can I just thank you very, very much for your submission. Thanks for taking the time to be part, and it's good to have community people like yourself who are prepared to stand up and work with us on these sorts of issues. So we really do appreciate the time you've taken. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
Okay, thank you. Have we got Sophia Devine with us, please? Hello. How are you? Oh, it's lovely to see you again.
So Sophia is our submitter number 111 from page 102. And Sophia's unmuted, so she can speak from now.
Yep.
Thank you.
Welcome, ma'am, and the floor is yours. It's lovely to see you.
Tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Sophia Rika tōku ingoa. I'm just a mum concerned about our, tūranga wāwai, our place where our tupuna and hapu once lived collectively, looking after our awa moana forest, everything connected to Papatūānuku. A responsibility and obligation, So for me, hapu rangatiratanga shouldn't be defined by it. It should be defined by its people, not the local electoral roll act. And what I mean about that is that hapu territories and their and the integration of how this is going to happen is very important. Well, important to me as a mum. I have 12 children, and I'm doing my best to guide them the best I can in different kinds of disciplines. So I am very concerned about our kaitiaki-ship and how we looked at, and how a simple mother as me can help guide my tamariki into a really good kaitiaki role and responsibility around Papatūānuku. So to me, the representation tables, the 10% rule, shouldn't apply to tangata whenua. The quality of representation is based on hapu independence and hapu whānau interdependencies. Kaupapa Māori, the foundations, as you just should be tika and puna right from the word go, the foundations. You can't have the roots without the fruits. So however long that takes for us to raise a nation together, then I think that we should invest in that mātauranga, and we should collaborate the best that we can for that collective well-being, not just for hapu-driven kaupapa, but for a collective nation looking after the planet or looking after Papatūānuku, for instance. So basic for the representation, I think it's important to empower tino rangatiratanga, and I think it's really important to engage hapu rangatiratanga at the roots, the hapu whānau, and how we do that is really important. How we set up our hapu kaitiaki, how we work alongside of each other, how we monitor and evaluate with our tools, because I like to see our tikanga-driven tools, our kites out there, and training the world, you know, not just the world's tools, but our tools as well, being implemented and understood, because it's no good having a kaitiaki or all these words if it's not understood by the ones that are going to use it and the ones that are going to work together to drive this kaupapa, to make sure that our kids can see the birds that our tupuna can see, to, you know, that they saw way back in their days, that we can see it today. That's important to me as a mother, that my mokopuna can see the birds that I see today, that they can climb the maungas that their tupuna once climbed, that that they can experience their responsibility around Papatūānuku and the connection to her, that they can actually have a decision-making power at the table, at the representation tables, under the political spheres of what set up in the first instance under 1835 He Whakaputanga. It was made very clear of how we were going to do that. And so I would really, really like to see a real engagement with hapu whānau, and I'd like to see a succession where our young ones can get involved in that decision-making process as well. We're practicing to do the time that it's a system that is fair and equitable. It's a system that cares about Papatūānuku and the planet that we stand on. Because if we don't look after Papa, where we're going to stand, right? So we all have the same mission. We all have the same vision for our nation. So I'm just a mum asking for that engagement and that truth. The truth, a really true engagement. Like Martin said, we need that foundation that's based on truth, a true partnership. Yeah, that's all. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very much. Again, we appreciate you taking the time, and it's important that we have feedback from people like yourself. It's really, we really appreciate it. So thank you. Moko, I see you've got a question, and the floor is yours, sir.
Kia ora, thank you, Mikara. Tēnā koe whai Sophia, and thank you for your submission. I've got, this is probably going to be a rolling question for me for submitters probably, is the name of our Māori ward, Untitled Chapter. I see here that you've suggested Te Whare Tapu o Ngāpuhi. It actually was really hard to try and think of a name for this ward, knowing that Northern Regional Council was always also voted in a Māori constituency, and they've gone with Te Raki Māori constituency for their name. Also knowing that Ngāpuhi is our biggest iwi here, but we also have our Muri Whenua tribes up in the real far north, and we've also got Te Roroa and South Hokianga, and Ngāti Whātua also have claims on our southern borders as well. So I wondered if you had any comments about your name you considered, and whether or not Ngātaio Tokore would be appropriate if that's where it ended up.
I think that's a question. That's what I'm talking about for the foundation building. That's where we need to engage people like me at the grassroots level and as a collective, because one thing that's powerful about our people is that we know what collective well-being looks like. We actually know how we can come together and make things work. and we just need that space to do that, and we need that responsibility, and we need to roll those obligations out the best that we can with the best of our abilities, and we've got it, you know.
Tēnā koe whai, Sophia. Thank you.
Thank you, Moho. Thank you, Sophia. And I see Kelly's got her hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. Kia ora, Sophia. Thank you for your submission. And I just wanted to ask, given that we're establishing Māori wards as of, this time next year, there'll be 3 or 4 Māori seats around the council table. Would you concede that once they're in place, that the real engagement with hapu whānau around a name, around what, around, the future of those seats, like, whether they're going to be ward-based or all at large in the future, could happen then?
Absolutely. I think it's a growing process. It's organic. And because, it's the true fruits that are growing, you see, and it's growing at the grassroots level. So you're allowing that ability to grow. And so, yeah, you're right. It's a process that happens. It doesn't happen overnight. We all know that. But, it's a continuous improvement progression, not hammering it out and boom, boom, be like this, boom, boom, be like that, and design that square. Boom, that's where you are. Right?
Yeah.
It's a
thank you.
natural progression. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those comments and replying to Kelly's question. We appreciate it very much. Once again, can I just say, really, really appreciate you taking the time to be part of it, because this is an important discussion. And we encourage you to continue contributing if you can.
Your Worship, Councillor Vucic has his hand raised.
Oh, I beg your pardon, John.
Hey, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah, I've just unmuted. Thank you, Sophia. Look, what you have highlighted in your submission, Sophia, seems to be a resounding theme right across the area, and that is having a much greater level of local participation, i.e. at the hapu level. And in doing all of this work, we looked at communities of interest, and there has been a desire and a push to try and get real representation down at that level. That's something I'm keen to pursue, and the question I have for you, would that actually help in what you're driving at if you had smaller areas like North Hokinga, South Hokinga, Chapua, where you are involved in the local decision making at those areas?
Yeah, the transmission of cultural values and beliefs will be a lot more understood, I think, if it's, that's the interdependencies, and allowing that space to grow those. You'll be amazed what happens when they're allowed that space to grow that ability, and that's the interdependency and the smaller groups. Yeah.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you.
Thank you very much. As I say, thank you so much for being part of us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Ka kite.
Take care. All the best. Aisha, you telling us it's 9 minutes? Was that the...
Our time is up, but I was going to just let you know that the next 2 submitters that we've got scheduled haven't actually arrived, and I wondered if you wanted to take a 10-minute break.
I think if everybody is of a mind to have a 10-minute break, we will come back at 10:30.
Your Worship, could I just ask that we have some rules around the questions?
Sure.
Please.
Yep. They're meant to be questions and not statements.
Right, thank you.
Thank you. If everybody can just keep that in mind. All right, we'll see you all back at 10:30. I'm not switching mine off because I don't know how to turn it back on. So just
All right. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank you for giving me this opportunity. Now, I assume you've read my submissions that I filed, and yesterday I sent supplementary notes, etc. So I assume that you've got those with you at the moment. You can hear me all right? Everything's working?
Yep, we can hear you good as gold, Ian.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. An opening statement. In preparing for the submission to this representative review, I observed a worrying aspect of the Council's deliberations. That is, that this review appears to be a sham, going through the motions to make it look like it's all done above board. Now, why do I say this? When you look at the information on the website, it asks answers some frequently answered questions. And one there was, I don't agree with Maori ward, can I oppose them? And the answer is no. This decision has already been made by Council and cannot be reversed through the representation review process. So the result of this review has already been determined because the rest of the proposals in relation to the other wards, etc., depend on the Maori wards being implemented. So really there's no point in submitting on the representation review. This seems to make the review a farce. Of course, this could be rectified by Council, but by going through the system, it would hold up and it would stop the review from operating because of the government dates that have been set. In spite of this, I've submitted in the hope that the rules of governance are more clearly understood. Comments on my main submissions. Paragraph 1. Oppose the introduction of Maori wards as proposed because they're undemocratic and discriminatory. Now, when you look at it, only Maori on the Maori electoral roll can vote for Maori wards in local body elections. So that means that there is a group of Maori that do not have the democratic vote to vote in a Maori ward in the local election. So it disenfranchises a substantial section of Maori. That group does not have the option to transfer to the Maori roll until 2024. If they choose to do that, when they're prevented from voting in the general electorate, and then they are forced to vote in the Maori electorates at the general election for central government. And to me, that's not democratic, and it's just not fair to that section. I've no way of knowing how large that section of Maori who are on the general roll is, though. Now, other councils have had second thoughts about the concern of Maori. Wanganui is one, because they have a system now that they feel is better than wards and have concern that through the ward system, the wrong people will be elected, those that do not whakapapa to the land or the iwi. So I think that's sort of something that's been overlooked completely. There are also unintended consequences. They may not come to fruition in the near future, but if we don't get this right, in the future we could have claims for political party wards if there were enough people in the far north for a political party, and surely there must be, because it's just about everyone's on the general election and follows one of the political parties. So you think of the UK, Australia, USA, all their sort of local, not exactly the same as we have here, but their systems are similar. And in America, the states have Democrats, Republicans and everything else. UK has the same, Conservative and Labor on local elections and everything. And I personally don't want local, central party politics in our wards up here. Paragraph 2, faulty process used to decide on Maori wards. Apart from upsetting the whole representation review, as I've already pointed out, if you take the meeting on the 4th of May to consider the motion, notice the motion on Maori wards. In the agenda that was put out for that meeting, item 3, it says deputations. No requests for deputation were received at the time of the agenda going to print. But when it comes to the actual meeting, with no other sort of notification or anything, there are 5 deputations heard by council, all apparently representing Maori groups. But there is nothing contained in those minutes as to the substance of those representations. And that's something that's faulty in the minutes. I mean, surely there must be a substance of what the deputation was, what the discussions were about, to actually make the minutes properly legal and the proper representation. Also, the method of voting on the motion and the amendments were faulty. And as regards to the deputations, I contacted the council to ask could I attend some of those workshops, and I was told no, it was only for the councillors and local board members. So I couldn't attend, and yet there are all these other people that attend these. Right, now when it comes to the voting of that actual meeting, it starts off the motion that the Far North District Council establish Maori wards. Then there was an amendment put by the Mayor, seconded by Dave Collard. And there's 3 paragraphs to that. That was put to the vote and that was lost. Then it says, another resolution, amendment, Kelly Stratford, Mayor John Carter, immediately reconsider its committee structure and membership. That amendment was carried, and it states here the amendment becomes the substantive motion. And then magically, that first notice of motion wording comes back into the resolution that was carried by the council. Now, that was up and says that the one put by Kelly Stratford immediately considers the current committee structure, etc., was carried and became the substantive motion. There was no evidence in the minutes there that the notice of motion was then reinstated as part of the one that was voted on. So there's a fault in the running or perhaps the minute taking. There's also the report to the meeting from Daryl Sargent. That's file number A2964943. And it says the purpose of the report to recommend that council establish Maori wards for the 22-25 local government elections. Now, generally, a report is supposed to be impartial and to give both sides the fors and against. As you read through the report, it does go into the different options and therefore it corrects itself. But then the purpose printed there is virtually just recommend straight out the Maori wards. Now, in his report, he comes up with 4 options for council to consider. And it has advantages, disadvantages, etc., listed alongside each one. Now, the first option, establish Maori wards. Listed in the disadvantages, has the potential to bring about an adverse reaction to some sections of the Northland community.
Ian, you've got 1 more minute left.
In option 2, it refers to the relationship risk having sought advice from Maori but not following through on their desire to establish wards. Option 3 refers to a poll. Disadvantage, relationship risk having sought advice from Maori but not following through on their desire to establish wards. And option 4, status quo. Disadvantages, relationship risk, having sought advice from Maori but not following through on their desire to establish wards. Now, that seems to be very one-sided. There was only one option and talks about disadvantaging a group or having adverse reaction. The other 3 options looks as if has more sway when it says relationship
Ian,
risk.
Ian, sorry, we'll have to draw you to a close, please.
Right. Well, I'll have to rely on you to honestly go through the rest of my notes and refer to the full representation report.
Yep.
And I'll just sort of draw a summary, which is at the end of my main submissions. And after a lot of thought, it would be a catastrophe to go ahead with creating rewards as proposed. It will be undemocratic, unfair, and disenfranchise a section of the Maori population. 2, council to use the representation review to amend the ward system for each ward to have equal number of representatives on council, adjusting boundaries to make that necessary. 3, making the voting system at large for all positions, mayor and councillors, to ensure full democracy and total fairness, to ensure people with the required skill sets are elected to council. And you'll read in my main submissions there about sometimes we don't elect the proper people to council. And ensure the right to vote for whom you want to is fully democratic and totally fair, and not restricted by which electoral roll or ward you are registered on. And that the council immediately commence the process to make this come to fruition. Because I can see that every ward should be approximately the same number of electors, and every ward should be voted for at large. Then that way, because often I've wanted to vote for someone onto council, but I couldn't because they're standing in a different ward from me. I think that way we will definitely get a better selection, and we'll get more democracy in it, and it'll be a much fairer result at the end. We've got all the right people acting for all the residents all the time.
Thank you, Ian. Thank you for your submission. We've given you more than your allotted time, so we appreciate the trouble you've taken and the detail, and obviously we will be looking for advice from staff on it. So thank you for coming and being part of us today. We do appreciate that very much.
Thank you, John.
Thanks, mate. We were looking to Hinarangi is not with us, as I understand it, and nor Jane Johnson at the moment is not with us either. Is that right?
So submitter Michael Fox was scheduled at 10:20. He hadn't actually confirmed that he was going to present, but he's a no-show with us this morning. Hinarangi Hamiona had something creep up, so we've rescheduled her for 11:50.
Right.
And we've just heard from, so our next one is Jane Johnson, who's scheduled to speak in 6 minutes' time. We had asked submitters to arrive at least 15 minutes early, so I was hopeful that she would have joined by now.
Right, but she's not here with us at this moment.
No.
Okay.
After Jane, we're scheduled to take a break and then reconvene at 11:40.
At what time?
11:40. There were a few that were cancelled around that time slot.
So we'll just pause everything at the moment, and we'll wait till 10:50 for Jane to arrive, and then we'll commence with hers, and then we will have a break as scheduled. And
Councillor Stratford, did you have a question?
No, I saw that Councillor Smith had her hand up for a question.
Yeah,
for Ian.
We've run out of time on it.
Okay.
So we'll just pause for a minute and wait till Jane arrives with us. We'll take that submission, and then we'll have a morning break, and then come back to Mr. Mahoney. you a hand up.
All right, so we take it that everybody's read the submission. So I'm really just want to re-emphasize what we've put in there, because we're quite concerned. The entire room of people, I was quite surprised at how almost unanimous it was, that when we held this meeting, it was prompted because of the rates review, but representation review was also discussed. And there were a lot of people. Kingston House was full with standing room only at the back, and every chair in the place was used. And they were really keen to see, rather than less representatives, to see more. And on reflecting on that afterwards, it was really apparent that we do have very diverse communities of interest across the district. And there would, and better representation basically means more representatives. So we were quite surprised to see your decision come through that has actually reduced the number of representatives from the general role to cater for these additional representatives from the Māori role. So I think we need to understand a little bit, and I'm not sure how you feel about it, but in talking to other people in preparation for this hearing, I was asked to put it to you, the question, and see why, or ask you if you could address how you came to this view that 4 representatives for the Māori role, which has less than 15,000 people on it, according to the Electoral Commission at the moment, and why you decided to do that as a general one ward rather than having subdivisions in the way that is done with the general role. I mean, there are 3 wards, but there are 9 subdivisions for across the general role. So how would you feel about perhaps going around very quickly or somebody taking a lead and explaining how you landed on 4 Māori seats and 1 role versus 6 on the general role that has about 30,000 people on it? 47,000 in total, but less than 15 on the Māori role, so it comes down to about 31,000. Does anybody want to answer that? Or is that not on at this point?
I think we'll just carry on with your submission at this point. Thanks, Jane.
Okay, because it wasn't clear in the documents how those numbers were produced. So in our submission, we've clearly pointed out that we don't think that that the proposal as it's landed and that we were asked to comment on provides for fair representation, because there are 47,000 voters across the far north. And while we supported the creation of Māori seats and having the Māori role becomes relevant to Māori voters, they get to choose which role they want to be on. Do they want to be on the general role or they want to be on the Māori role? And that's entirely their choice, and having that option available to them, we were completely supportive of. However, in coming to this number of 4 from the Māori role to represent the Māori community of interest, which is what the democratic process is about, and having representatives from that role, and then having reduced it down to 6 for the remaining 31 or 32,000 voters on the general role, it doesn't end up with fair representation. So we think that there is a risk of an appeal, basically, if you persisted with the numbers as you've landed in the proposal. So I just wanted to highlight that, because of course it's an option under the Electoral Act. If you take democracy seriously and the concept of representation being about voters and the electorate and the constituents, and the Electoral Act is very clear about the reasons for designing the electoral, how candidates are selected, and the proportional rule around the plus or minus 10%, and yet you've used 2 different methods. So you've ended up with the general population rather than voters being used in one part of the analysis, and then in the other part you've used voters. And then in using the voter numbers, you've not taken away the proportion that is on the Māori roll when calculating the number of people to include as voters in each ward. So on my submission, it's on page 3, I've inserted a table where the totals add up to 46,000, which means you've used the voter roll. And yet when you've looked at community boards, it looks like you've converted back to discussing the number of residents. And even in doing that with the community boards, you've ended up with really inequitable distribution of community board members as well. Because you've got Kaikohe Hokianga with 16,000 residents having 6 community boards, while Te Wharangi, Whangaroa, or the Bay of Islands ward, with 32,000 residents, gets 7 community board reps. It just means that there's a lot more people per representative when you look at the community boards, which is a problem when people are trying to access their representative, or when representatives are trying to get around and meet and network with all of the different groups within their constituency. So it means a community board member in the Bay of Islands Whangaroa has got a lot more work than the community board member sitting in Kaikohe Hokianga, because they have 6 board members for 16,000 residents. So twice as many residents as in the Bay of Islands, and yet only 7 community board members. So 1 extra person. And similarly, when it comes to the wards, you've got 1 councillor for 7,000 people, voters, in the Kaikohe Hokianga ward, twice as many people in the Te Heku ward, and they get twice as many councillors. However, by the time you get to the Bay of Islands Whangaroa ward, where there are 4 times more voters, which is the method that you used there rather than residents, you used on that one, voters, you've only got 3 councillors. So there should be, by your own reckoning, using those figures, it should be at least 4 councillors for Te Wharangi, Whangaroa, Bay of Islands. So when we were looking at these, it was hard to see how you landed on the numbers that you did and what other options you considered. So we've proposed more councillors. We've suggested having subdivisions or wards for the Māori councillors, or from the Māori representatives, from the Māori roll, because they're not necessarily, according to the Electoral Act, bizarrely, don't necessarily have to be Māori. Anybody can stand or be nominated to run for the Māori, as a representative for the Māori roll. We've suggested that you actually have wards and that you increase the number of councillors and create a 4th ward. And I think even this, the experience in terms of vaccination at the moment during this pandemic and potential community outbreak, even if you look at how those vaccination rates are going, you can see there's a clear difference through the middle of the district where there are very low vaccination rates. We're talking about a largely rural population, very distributed, small settlements, small clusters of houses. When we talk about our townships, they're very clearly defined as tight little urban areas networked with water and wastewater systems. But half of our people in the far north don't attach to those systems. They're living in more remote rural communities and settlements, and they've been hard to reach with vaccination, but they're also hard to reach in engaging them in the civics of the council business. And we think that it would be a lot of value in creating not only the Māori wards, but a 4th ward that pulls together the community of interest through that backbone or the middle of the far north. So without preaching to the converted, because you're all representatives, you've all run for council and succeeded in that. So you're believers in the democratic process, you've all campaigned and you're doing a great job. So how about having a look at more representation, a 4th ward for the general roll, having more councillors, more subdivisions created to allow for a better representation around the community boards, but also this idea of a 4th ward and having actual subdivisions for the Māori wards as well.
Thank you, Jane, for your submission. and your comments around the community board. Interesting, and I must go back or we will go back and just have a look and have discussions with our community board chairs. It is important to remember that while as councillors you are elected from a ward area, when you are elected you have a responsibility to represent the whole of the district, just in the same way as the mayor, regardless of where they come from.
Absolutely.
He or she has a responsibility to represent the whole of the district. So
absolutely, but I think I've come at it from a slightly different way though, because we know that happens around the council chambers, but we also recognise that an awful lot of work is delegated to the committees, and not all councillors sit in all committees. So there is an ability to split the workload, and I think that if you think of it from a constituent perspective, splitting the load means having councillors more available to members of the community, and especially now that we're looking at a government that's, you know, really shaking up the entire sector. We're talking about not just Three Waters, RMA reform, building massive building programs with Kāinga Ora, you know, in the Housing and Urban Development Act, the Three Waters program I think I mentioned, but also the New Zealand Infrastructure Strategy. You've got a district plan that's about to be reviewed. There's actually a massive workload coming at you, and we're really keen to have community input to that stuff, because we feel as ratepayers, and talking to people about it and through our public meetings, people are feeling very, very railroaded, and it would be really valuable to have constituents able to meet with our elected representatives at council more easily by having way more of you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, and we do appreciate the time that you do take, because I know you put a huge amount of effort in, and so thank you for your comments, and we will certainly take those seriously as we get back to discuss this presentation.
Yep.
Thank you for your time, and you have a great day. And I will now call for a pause, as our next presenter, unless Aisha corrects me, is not due until 11:40. So we will take a 35-minute break and come back to hear from Mr. Des Mahoney at 11:40. Is that correct, Aisha?
Yes. Now is our scheduled break until 11:40 a.m.
11:40. Yeah, just I'd like everyone to be back on just a bit before then, please. Des, officially welcome. And the floor is yours. We'll give you a signal at 9 minutes. So it allows you to 1 minute just to conclude. If you finish early, the councillors may have some questions. So thank you. Thanks for participating, and the floor is yours, sir.
Tēnā koutou katoa. I want to make it very clear so everybody is aware. I am making the submission as Des Mahoney, ratepayer of Kaitaia, and nothing to do with the Ngākahu Trust. So I needed to have that very clearly stated, so there's no misconception. I've submitted to the review. I don't believe what you're putting up is fair and equitable. It needs to go back to originally how it was. It was a councillor for the South Hokianga, one for the North Hokianga, one for Kai Kui. Up here we have the 3 councillors, Kaitaia, North Cape, which from memory took in Awanui, and then from the other side of the road, out of State Highway 10, right through to the boundary with Whangaroa. When it comes to Kerikeri, should be a councillor for Whangaroa, Wapapa, one for Kerikeri, and the other councillor for Paihia Russell Moriwani, Mayor-elect. Māori wards. I'm fully supportive of Māori. I always have been and always will be, Nate. I don't believe you got the representation right. You're going to have 6 Pākehā around the table, you need 6 Māori around the table. As far as setting up a separate ward for Wahapapa, that's unfair representation. We've already got that unfair representation when it comes to that block vote from over the Eastern Ward. While it's known as the capital of retirement over there and old age rest homes and that, they move on as quick as they move in. Eh? So you can't say that's fair representation. I don't agree with the process that you're using. It's formed. It's undemocratic. You're going to have 4 councillors over in Kerikeri. We're entitled to have the 4, Te Hiku and in the Western. Now, we look at the present representation that we've got at the moment. While councillors are elected from the different wards, that's exactly where most of them stay.
Des, officially welcome, and floor is yours. We'll give you a signal at 9 minutes. That allows you to 1 minute just to conclude.
Haven't you heard what I've been saying?
The councillors may have.
No,
Yes, we
it
have.
sounds
Sorry,
I don't know what that is.
replaying.
Sorry, Des, that's somebody replaying the live stream. I'll just
I want to make it very clear so everybody is aware. I am making
Who is that?
Sorry, dear, something's gone wrong with the system.
Ratepayer of Kaitaia.
Can we turn that off?
Oh, it's Des. So, sorry, Des. I think in the background somewhere we may be hearing the live stream being played from your green somehow. Can you unmute, Des? Apologies, folks. Technical difficulties. Can you unmute, Des?
I didn't have anything playing in the background.
We can hear you
Can you
loud and
hear
clear
me?
now, dear.
We can hear you now. Apologies for that, Des. There was a bit of a feedback rerun of your submission. So carry on. I think we're clear of the feedback now.
So did you get all of that before?
Yep, we did, Des. Yep, until somebody started playing over the top of it, we were fine.
Well, there's no device that I had on. I only got this one going at the moment.
Okay, mate.
The internet connections up here is rubbish at the moment. Now, we're unfairly represented. Councillors are elected at large from their different, from their wards. Well, that's where they stay. Exactly where they stay. And yet you're meant to represent the whole of the district. Hey, you got that wrong as well. Now, I want to go on about Māori wards. I fully support them. And I'll always support them. We got 49% of the population in Northland belongs to Māori. Now, we should have as many councillors around the table as you Pākehās there. Shouldn't be any discrimination. And that's exactly what this is doing. And those councillors, Māori councillors, should be elected from the Māori, from the Māori roll. It's the same voting process. And they should represent the rohi they're living in, part of the rohi they're living in there. That's representation. Otherwise, we have exactly what's happening over on the Eastern Ward. We're going to end up more councillors over there than what we're getting everywhere else. It's unfair representation. So you need to go back, Mr. Carter, councillors, and do the honest thing. You're going to put 6 Pākehā in there, put 6 Māori in there. If you don't, it's unfair representation. You're going to have 3 councillors for the whole of the one from Te Hiku, one from Eastern, one from Western. Then, okay, 3 Māori. Otherwise, forget it. It's unfair representation. And the last thing I'm going to say is, for too long, you've allowed the kere to have the mass vote and the decision making because they got 4 councillors. Go back to the reality. Undemocratic. And the mayor, at the present time, is elected at large. Well, I can't wait to see the day when the amalgamation of all the councils go ahead. Then we might get some representation. I was against it when Brownie was mayor, but I'm really feeling the need for central government to amalgamate. Whether that's going to be an advantage or not. But it'll cease that dictatorial behaviour and attitude of council. And as I said before, you can't rely on Kerry should have no more councillors than Te Hiku or the Western Ward, because They come and go as fast as they arrive, eh? And the undertaker is normally the one that makes the money. That's my submission. You can take it or leave it. But the way the process is run at the moment is undemocratic. It's unfair representation, and it's a nonsense. I have not seen one councillor come up to Ngākahu in the last 2 years to have a look around. I haven't even seen, I've seen Councillor Vucic, Councillor Radic. I haven't seen the rest of you. Unfair democratic decision making. Hey, that's my corridor. Take it or leave it. Don't like it, that's it. And I'm recording this, Mayor John, because of the threats that have been made. So we're very much aware.
Yeah, so the whole thing's recorded, just so you know. But thank you very much for your time and your submission. We appreciate the fact that you've put the effort in to come and represent your views to us. And along with the others, they'll be taken into account. So take care, stay safe, and thank you very much for taking the time.
Ai, ka kite anō.
I see we have with us Hinarangi. Hello, Hinarangi, how are you?
Tēnā koe, I'm good, thank you.
Lovely to have you with us. And you've got up to 10 minutes to make your presentation. Aisha will give you a 9-minute hand wave. And then if you finish early, there may be time for questions from councillors. So the floor is yours, ma'am. Thank you very much.
Tēnā koe. Tēnā koutou katoa ngā kaimahi me ngā kaimahi o te kaunihira me ngā whanaunga e whakarongo mai I runga I te hui nei no reira mihi ane ki a koutou. Ai, ko Hinerangi himi ona taku ingoa. I'm here representing myself, speaking for myself as a resident of Ohaiwai and as a mokopuna of our hapu of Turi, Taniwha, Ngāti Hineira, Ngāti Korohoi, and my marae Parawhinua, marae Rāwhitiroa and Tauwhara. Nō reira, thank you for the opportunity to speak. I have submitted a written submission and I'd just like to speak to a couple of points very briefly. In my submission, everyone was given the opportunity to have a say on the reconfiguration of boundaries for wards. Most of the wards I didn't respond. I didn't have a response to places that I don't live in. I think that's up to those places that live there to make those calls for themselves. But one thing I did wonder was where there are potential boundaries that may move for some people. I wondered how that affected those Māori communities that lived in those areas. So if you put a boundary line through between, say like if you were doing that in our area and you put a line between us and Ohaiwai here in Ngāwha, we're really close to the people just over in Ngāwha. We're really close to our whanaunga just over in Waimate North. So anyway, that isn't affecting our area, my area now, but I did wonder what kind of consideration is given by the council to splitting those Māori communities who still live as whanaunga and still rely on each other in that way. So I don't know if there will be a forthcoming answer, but it's something I thought about. Also, I'm in full support of the Māori wards and look forward to how that works up. I don't have anything more to offer there. I did listen to the previous speaker from Kaitaia, I think, Des Mahoney, and would like to also support his call for 50%. Well, I wrote in my written submission that I think there should be equal number of Māori councillors and representation across council for Māori, and so I'd like to put my voice in behind to support the previous speaker. And finally, and I've spoken to a couple of people during the SNA March about this, I would really like to see the council commit to a better education program for staff and councillors around he whakaputanga and te tiriti. You know, that's surely nothing new to any of the ears on this call, that those kawenata are our founding documents for Te Tautokoro and for all of Aotearoa New Zealand. And I can't encourage you enough, please increase your education, your understanding and your engagement with those wonderful documents of ours. They're often seen and viewed as controversial and difficult. Actually, if you unpack them, they're extremely generous and loving documents. And as a descendant of many of the signatories to those kawenata, I feel it's my obligation to keep pushing that they are honoured and that they are put in their rightful place. That's all I have to say today. Thank you for the opportunity. And if there's anyone that wants to ask me questions, I'm happy to give it a go. Kia ora.
Thank you very much. Really do appreciate your comments and your submission. There are a few minutes. If Moko, you would like to ask, can I just remind people that can you please keep your comments, elected members that is, to questions and not statements. We're here to listen to the public. Thank you.
Tēnā koe, me kara, tēnā koe whaia hinerangi, mihi ana ki a koe. I did have a question for you. Thank you for your submission, and it's always a good reminder to us as councillors and to our staff too about the unique place we live in and what we can learn being the holders of our documents here in the North. My question for you is, what are your views on the single Māori ward for our entire district, which would elect 4 Māori ward councillors at this stage? We've been getting a number of submissions around people wanting to see 4 separate wards for Māori, so a single ward. It is extremely hard. You said in here 50% representation, absolutely, but we're bound by legislation, of course, and if we get every single Māori in the district to get on the Māori roll, we would have that. But what are your views on the single ward versus splitting those wards?
I think that, yeah, my view is that actually anything that's more than what we've got is good. We know we've got so much further to go. And so I'm not saying I'm not fussy, but I'm also realistic about the challenges ahead of us. So I'm overjoyed that we have what we have, but that's not the end of it. That's only the beginning of it. That's, you know, just a foot in the door, and then whatever the next step's going to be, the aspiration is for he whakaputanga te tiriti to be honoured, and we'll know that that will happen when the time comes, and this really is only the very beginning of it. So that's my simple answer, Moko. It's a start. He timatanga noiho.
Tēnā koe, ngā mihi.
Thank you for that response. David Collard. You're on mute, David.
Apologies, David Clendon.
It's David Clendon. I beg your pardon. David Clendon.
Thank you. Yeah, kia ora whaia. A sort of supplementary to Moko's question. If we were indeed to endeavour to go to more Māori wards, 4 perhaps, who do you think should make the determination about where the boundaries of that ward, of those wards, should be? Because that is our problem. I don't think it's appropriate for the council to determine which hapu, which iwi boundary should be honoured in that. So where do you think would be the forum to try and sort out that rather difficult geographical division?
Sure. That's a good question and good one for all of us, and a really good challenge for all of us. I think that absolutely ngā hapu o Ngāpuhi should make that decision and have those discussions. And I don't say that lightly. I know how challenging that is, being a hapu person myself. But absolutely, the authority for those conversations sits with the hapu, and I think we can get there if we're seriously given the I guess the serious consideration to have those conversations amongst ourselves. As I hope you will know, in terms of the settlement of our claims, the Crown is looking at ngā hapu o Ngāpuhi to approach and address our claims in that way. So as hapu, we are trying our best to try and piece ourselves back together so we can participate again in those structures in society. So yeah, to simply answer your question, it's only one answer for me, and that is come to the hapu.
Kia ora, thank you.
Thank you very, very much for your submission. We really appreciate the fact that you've taken the time to be with us today, and your comments will be considered as we go forward. This is evolving, of course, and so it's going to be one of those issues that will evolve over time. The incoming council will have a lot of work to do on this, actually, but we do appreciate you being with us today.
Tēnā
So
koe.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that. Now, Aisha, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've now come for another pause. And that the
Roman
next,
Porter was our next scheduled speaker. I spoke with him in the last adjournment, and he's out on the road working with police today, so sends his apologies.
yeah,
We do have David Rhodes in the meeting, so we could
is
bring him
David with
forward
us, is he?
from 12:20. And we also have Mere Mangu, who's currently scheduled for 12:40, but is present, so I'd suggest taking David and then Mere.
That sounds like a plan. So welcome, David. Wherever you are you there, David?
Yeah, I'm just unmuting John, and I'm just trying to undo. Right, I think am I with you now?
We've certainly got your voice anyway.
Okay.
So welcome.
Sorry, just for councillors, David Rhodes is submitted number 44 from page 332.
So thank you, David. The floor is yours. Good to have you with us, and the meeting's yours, sir. Okay, I'm sorry. It doesn't appear that it wants to turn my camera on, but there we go. Anyway, this is my opinion, and unfortunately, this process is like rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic or fiddling with the fascinator on your head as to whether it is the right colour or at the right angle. Basically, I feel the council has already decided the results and have not given the public, who they represent, the opportunity to comment on the main event. This is just lip service to the much bigger issue and really irrelevant. I would like it to go on official record that this council collectively, not necessarily individually, is racially divisive, undemocratic and unconstitutional in its dealing with its fair representation. You have not demonstrated a reasonable requirement for an extra councillor. You have categorically prohibited the constituents their right to have a say on the big issue, and you have done this in the knowledge you are in the wrong and haven't followed procedure. You've been dictated to from central government, and instead of standing up to them and saying they are wrong, you have acted as puppets and dictated the outcome. If it was possible to invoke a vote of no confidence in this council to represent the constituents they were elected to speak for and have an election tomorrow for people that care and have integrity, then I would do it today. I believe this council collectively are derelict in their duty to the Far North District and its constituents and have flaunted the oath they took to represent those constituents. I've made a submission. Basically, with what you're doing, as I say, it's just fiddling with the deck chairs on the Titanic. The result's still going to be the same, and I just feel that the whole process has been flawed. And that's basically my submission. Thank you. Thank you for the time. Thank you, David. And it's very succinct, so we certainly hear what you're saying. Are there any councillors this time? Have the councillors got any questions they might want to ask? I can't see any hands up, but it doesn't mean. Is that you, Matty?
Yeah, I just want to say to you, Dave, where are you coming from?
Where I'm coming from is
basically
the issue that the community were not given the opportunity to actually comment on the fair representation. That was just basically dictated to us. And on such a big issue, I believe that the community should have been consulted in the same manner that you have tried to consult on this, which is the menial part of the task. It should have been put out to the community and given the same opportunity to have this, the ability to be able to have their say here in this forum as you're directing it at the moment. Thank you. Thank you all. Are there any other questions? If not, David, I just say thank you again for taking the time to be with us. We appreciate your comments, and we'll certainly take them into consideration as we move forward.
Thank you for
very
the
much.
opportunity to be able to have my say at last. Thank you.
Pleasure as always. Thank you. Now, did we say Mary Mungo is with us? There she is. Lovely lady. How are you today?
Very good, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And it's lovely to see you as always. And ma'am, the floor is yours.
Kia ora. I'm actually not going to take up the whole of the 10 minutes, John, but just to say that I've been listening for some of the submitters, and I do support Jane Johnson in saying that, you know, we should be increasing our representation probably to the maximum. And because I'm also supportive of Hilda Harawira's submission, in that I think that because this is such a new innovation and a great expression of Te Tiriti, well, anyway, a beginning of this representation model, that I would support a review before the next, not this coming election, but the one after that, when this has been in progress for about 2 years. I think it's time enough to make a review and possibly change it for the 2025 elections. But anyway, in terms of my submission, I was wanting to comment about the equal distribution. Oh, first of all, my submission is only about the Māori wards. I was thinking that there won't be that many submissions from Māori about the Māori wards, and I'm really appreciative of the fact that you have put your minds to doing this, and even though it's probably not going to satisfy everybody, at least it's a start, and I commend you all as councillors for making that decision. And I'm seeing that we are going to have one ward put aside for Māori for this next election, and that's okay. But I would sincerely hope that you would divide it according to the Māori boundaries that already exist and are recognised amongst ourselves, and that is having the one Māori ward, and I hope that you would call it Ngāpuhi Nui Tonu, because we are the iwi that are up here in the same way that Waikato are recognised, Tainui are recognised, all those other iwi are recognised. I don't see any point in avoiding the fact that this is Ngāpuhi. So Ngāpuhi Nui Tonu is quite all right because every iwi is in this, under this council's umbrella at the moment. And so in keeping with that name, it's really easy to divide us into equal portions, so to speak, about hokianga, and that would include both sides of the hokianga. Hokianga, Taumarere, Whangaroa and Muri Whenua. They're already natural groupings for us as Māori. So I wouldn't want us to be represented upon where people live who are going to put their names forward, but rather those 4 subdivisions within the ward. And further to that submission was talking about equal distribution. And of course, the first one is always about resourcing. And I don't quite know what that would look like, but I would hope that the council will put their minds to it and come up and make it public as to what it is each councillor would hope to get in terms of resourcing, and not just financially, but in terms of services to those councillors who put their names forward. And I'm not saying just for the Māori wards, I think it should be right across the board so that it's open and transparent what people are getting. And that would include any travel, because obviously some of the wards are going to be much more distant than others, and include a lot of travel. And you would notice that in my submission, I've gone along with the other submitters from Māori and talking about 6,000 within each ward, so to speak, or within each subdivision of the Māori ward. And I'm doing that on my part deliberately because I could see that the division didn't quite go according to the population. But in terms of a Māori standing and when they get in, and I'm sure that those Māori councillors sitting there right now realise that not only are they representing just their own within their own ward, but other Māori from other areas also expect them to speak up for them on different issues or whatever. And I think that would be even more of a demand when we have selected people who are representing Māori. And just one last comment, and that is that even though we have Māori who are not Ngāpuhi living within the area, it doesn't matter, because the services and the obligation and the representation are going to go out to every Māori, regardless of where they come from or where they whakapapa to. So that's my submission. Open to questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And always right on the button, as you always have been. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from elected members or staff for that matter? Oh.
Tēnā koe whaemere, ngamihi nui ki a koe I tēnei wā. Thank you so much for your submission. It was extremely insightful. I think I wanted to ask a pātai. When we were going through this process, it was extremely hard to try and fit within the legislation on how it all has to be divided up and how it all works, but also know that it's the first time we're going to have a Māori ward. So what we got to was having a single ward maybe this time around and actually having another representation review after the next elections where we can actually sit down and work through this. So what we settled on as our proposal was a single ward, and then we settled on the name, trying to figure out how we don't mix it up with regional council, and also don't just, we pay homage to all 11 iwi entities within our rohe as well. Do you think that that could be, that what we've got now as a proposal could just be the go ahead until we can actually have further proper conversations with the benefit of more time?
Yeah, I don't mind it being an interim, but knowing that you would probably be subjected to oratory as to which tide you're going to be operating under, whether it's an incoming or an outgoing tide. Both have different characteristics, so as long as you're prepared. But I think if this is an interim, that's fabulous. You know, we have to start somewhere, and this is part of it. In terms of the one ward, I think from just a glance over the submissions, I see that there's a general sort of angst about all the prospective candidates coming from the one area who vote the most. And that would be a tragedy for us in the whole of the council area, if that be the case. So I think having that, we're still under the one ward, but having a clear direction that we'll actually have it within 4 wards, but every Māori on the electoral roll will be able to elect for those 4. I don't know how we're going to do it exactly, but you know, there are technical people that can cope with that sort of thing. But I do think that the nominations need to be clear as to the division so that there's equal representation right throughout the council area. Kia ora.
Thank you for that response, Mary. We appreciate that very much. And thank you once again for your taking the time to make your submissions. We do appreciate the experience and wisdom you bring to our table. So thank you very, very much. Now, Aisha, David Scoffman is David with us? Oh,
he has arrived.
I can see him right in front of me. Welcome, young fella. It's good to have you with us. David, we've got your presentation, of course. Aisha will tell us which page it's on. And the floor is yours for 10 minutes, Aisha, when you can, if you can just tell us.
So David Scoffman wasn't scheduled to speak till 12:30, but it's great he's arrived early. Thank you, David.
Okay,
You'll
that's
find
fine. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you good as gold. Yep.
Okay, right.
Which
David has
pages
submitted
are they?
104 from page 357 in your booklets.
357. Thank you. Thank you, David. The floor is yours, and Aisha will give you a 9 minutes hand signal.
Okay, fine. Well, look, I just want to turn really to the points that I make at the very end of my written submission on page 3 of my written submission, where I list 6 points. The first one I want to address, I mean, I'm taking it that you've read the paper, obviously. The first one I want to address is fair and balanced representation. Now, look, a lot of the work was done back in 2008, 2009, and I actually did submit separately the presentation that was made then, which is a presentation really to get more balance in the community in terms of the fact that the Bay of Islands ward at the time was very dominant indeed. And that's only become worse over time because there's been a 23% increase in the general population of the far north and something like 27% of that, with a 27% increase in the Bay of Islands area. That, as you rightly point out, is mainly in Waipapa. So at the time we made a clear point that a very solid presentation for saying, look, there should be 4 wards rather than 3 to avoid the dominance, the tremendous dominance of the Bay of Islands in large numbers of population. At the time, it was dominated somewhat by Kerikeri, rather much by Kerikeri. This has been aggravated by the increase of population predominantly in the Waipapa area. So within that ward, there is a dominance from the north. So there's a case for making an extra ward. I note that you're now separating subject following a council submission decision to have Maori representation. You've created a single ward for the whole of the far north for Maori. So really what I'm talking about is creating 5 wards. In terms of Maori representation, as the presentation is made by the council right now, you're proposing to have 4 Maori councillors for 25,000, an estimated 25,000 Maori people. And yet, if we just keep the Bay of Islands, I'll refer to the Pewharangi Ki Whangaroa General Ward as the Bay of Islands ward in what I'm saying. You've got slightly more than 25,000 people represented by, on the general electoral roll, represented by 3 councillors. So that's not right. There's a big discrepancy between the two. So that really needs to be addressed. It could be addressed by either reducing the number of Maori councillors or adding 1 more to the Bay of Islands. So I'm referring back to very much to the sheets that I put. There are 3 sheets that I put in my presentation in an attachment to as an attachment to the presentation. And on the first one, I discussed this question of councillors. On the second one, I talk about the community, the actual present structure, the proposed structure by the council for the community boards. And here I've got one thing wrong. That is, I've looked at within the 3 wards that you're proposing, with the Bay of Islands ward being a very big ward, I've got a mistake in terms of the residents per community board number. It's correct for Te Hiku at 3693. It's wrong for the Bay of Islands. It's actually 4705 residents per community board member. But for the Hokianga, it's roughly half that at 2278. So that shows the disproportionate, the disparity. And particularly here, I haven't mentioned it so far, is a disparity which we did mention back in 2008 between the Bay of Islands ward as you're proposing it and the Kaikohe Hokianga ward, which is roughly half the population in total of the Bay of Islands ward. So there's a factor of 2 there, which is a bit crazy. If we look at actual numbers of community boards, what I would suggest is actually if you split the Bay of Islands ward in 2, into a northern area and a southern area, you can still keep the same 19 community board members who actually don't cost the council very much, less than actually a council seat, 1 community board seat that is. It still comes to 19, but just reduce the number in the Kaikohe Hokianga area to 4 community board members and have 9 up in the Bay of Islands split between the 2 wards. So that really is the number of that part of the presentation in terms of community board numbers, Maori representation, and the splitting the ward, the actual Bay of Islands ward. If we look at really the subdivisions within the ward, at the time of 2008, we made quite a strong case that there is a definite community of interest on the Russell Peninsula that is virtually an island. It's separated from the mainland quite clearly. There is a bit of link to Apua, but there certainly is not a link to places like Towai and Maramaku and Pokare, which are actually physically separated under your proposal to shift Tamariri into the Kaikohe Hokianga ward. You cannot physically drive between the two areas within the Russell Apua ward as the contrived Russell Apua ward, as you suggest, without going through the other ward, which is crazy. So there is no, it is completely contrived. And in my paper, towards the end of my paper, under point 3 of the main text, I do point out that at the time, back in 2008, 2009, Auckland was being sorted out. And the question came up as to how you represent the islands like Waiheke. And if you note now, Waiheke has roughly about 1/9 of the population there's a board representing Waiheke that has 1/9 of the population of the Waitemata board over on the mainland. So this actually blatantly goes against any 10% rule. So what I would suggest here is you think about communities of interest in terms of actually how they interact, rather than being too hidebound by actual restrictions, or should we say somewhat artificial plus or minus 10% rules and so forth. Lastly, in terms of naming, Bay of Islands is actually quite a trademark area. It's got a good trademark. It's getting recognized around the world. And suddenly to call it Te Paewharenga, I have no objection to introducing Maori into the language here in New Zealand, but it possibly will be confusing and downgrades that trademark. Also, Russell was originally called Kororareka, and quite often we refer to it as Russell Kororareka. So on that basis, if you're going to change one, why not change the other and make it Russell Kororareka? I think that covers the highlights of the points I want to make, which are split into 5 wards if you have a Maori ward, and fair balance. And if you have 3 Maori councillors, then it should be, then you need to have more. If you have 4 Maori councillors, you need to have 4 in the Bay of Islands if you keep the Bay of Islands as is.
David, thank you very much for your submission, and well thought out as always. I really appreciate that. I'm just looking to see if there was any hands up of any questions from any elected members. Rachel.
Thank you, Mayor Carter. Kia ora, David. Thank you for your time today and your submission. I just wanted to clarify, I'm not sure if I misheard you, but you spoke against the shifted Taumariri into another ward, and you talked about the Kaikohe Hokianga ward. We've proposed to include it into the the Kawakawa Morewa subdivision, which you've indicated in your proposal you support, but you spoke against. So I just wanted to clarify whether or not you supported Taumariri being included in the Kawakawa Morewa subdivision. Thank you.
I do support that. I was merely making the point you can't get to Russell Apua without going through Tamariri unless you go a very abstruse route.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that response. There are no other further questions? If not, David, can I just... Oh, Kelly.
Sorry. Just takes a while to put my hand up. Thank you for your submission, David, and sorry I haven't replied. You did send it through directly, but it's been pretty hectic. The question I have is around when you prepared your submission, did you take into account the impact of single transferable voting and the its impact on electing people?
No, I did not. Not at all.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, David, thank you again for taking the time to be with us and to give us your deliberations. We really do appreciate them. It's good to see you again, even if it's not quite in the flesh as such. But nevertheless, it's how we are just at the moment. Hopefully, we'll level down very shortly. All right, thank you. Now,
okay, kia ora, ngā mihi o te ahi ahi.
Kia ora. Thank you. Is John Titoy or John Wood on the screen yet at the moment, Aisha?
Not yet, Your Worship. John Tiertor was not due until 12:50.
12:50.
So we've had a few submissions in this time period where they've been quite short. So we are ahead of schedule.
Yeah.
So you could take another 20-minute
We'll take another. We'll come back at 12:46. How does that sound? All right, good. Thank you, everybody. We'll Righto, folks. Welcome back all.
So, Your Worship, I've put in the chat the references to our last two submitters, but neither of them have arrived yet.
Right. Do you want to represent them, Aisha?
Oh, that's a big task.
Right, but we're not. They're not due. Well, John's not due until John Titoy is not due till 12:50. So we will. All
We have
wait.
asked them to join 15 minutes early.
Yes, I do
so
agree.
they should both be here if they're working to that premise.
Technically, they should both be here, but anyway, we will wait and see.
Neither of them have provided active phone numbers either, so we haven't been able to ring them.
Right. Okay. Well, all we can do is just wait, and then I'm not sure that we need to have a lunch break, given that we've had 4 afternoon or morning teas.
At what time was lunch planned?
I guess if we were
Are we live streamed?
we are.
Okay, thank you. Given that it appears that the last two submitters are not attending, I would now move that we close the meeting and we will close with a karakia. Do I have a second to the closing, please?
Happy to see you.
What's that, sorry?
Dave beat me to it.
All good?
And happy to do our closing karakia if you would like.
Thank you, Kelly. I was going to ask you to do that if you would, please.
Kia
Then we'll
tau, kia
all
tātou.
stay on.
Oops.
Thank you. Carry on.
Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai tuko tātou ariki, o ihi karaiti, me te aroha, me te atua, me te whiwhinga tahitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake, 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 āmene.
Amen.